Hi, you guys. Some of you have written to me about the Twitter being taken down. I took it down. I read the new terms and conditions, and I just didn't like what it said. It said that they were going to track everything we say, everything, posts we engage with. It might say the same thing on all of the social media sites, but I guess since Elon Musk took over, he wrote it in kind of common language. Sometimes this is in language that we can't interpret. And I found something the other day in chapter 17 of, this is called the Red Letter Edition, all of the red text. This is from 1944. It's the Holy Bible. Let me see when it was made. Books Incorporated Publishers. And then it's in 1944. So I was reading this, and the reason, there's a couple of reasons it struck me, and I also want to show you this. I think it's here. One of these passages says, you cannot be deceived by men. So I didn't see anything in this book about marrying children to military personnel when they're 6 years old. I didn't see anything about certain children being sold, but a lot of it does deal with banking and tellers of the truth. They're tellers, the bank tellers. So the people that are being stalked are people that haven't established themselves on the private side and they're still in the public side. And so this is interesting. Let me see where I can find it. It also says, verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born of water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. Marvel not that I said unto thee, ye must be born again. But I do think this taking children and making them a financial instrument, at your birth is one thing, but making, 25 birth records so that even your identity is suspect is, I think that I can't find that anywhere in the Bible. Let's see. Let me see if I can find. I just found the one. Take heed that no man deceive you. So these people that come to you might not be your friends at all, and they might not be your family. And that is very unusual. See that. Take heed that no man deceive you. Okay, now I'm going to go here to chapter 17. Now, why am I going to talk about chapter 17? Chapter 17 is Q. Okay, now I'm not saying, there's probably other, many other chapter 17s in here, but this I thought was interesting. So the text in red is, either spoken by Jesus or what Jesus said. Jesus is teaching. And a lot of it has to do with banking. Stuff that if you're not educated about banking or the basically sale of you as a commodity under a birth certificate, you can get into trouble. But what I don't understand is the marriage, how many times they married me on paper. I can't find anything in here. I do find something where Jesus is giving a comforter to the world. And the comforter to the world, up here it says, I have given them thy word, and the world hath hated them, because they are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. So I was thinking about this in terms of all children are born of God's, they're God in God's holy kingdom, which is not of the world. It is, I mean, he found a way to say this. It's kind of, you have to kind of read into it a little bit. Thou hast given him, okay, these words spake Jesus, and lifted up his eyes to heaven, and said, Father, the hour is come. Glorify thy Son, that thy Son may also glorify thee, as thou hast given him power over all flesh, that he should give eternal life to as many as thou hast given him. Now, in the chapter before this, they're talking about a comforter, a child, being given to the world. And even if you're given to the world, I still can't find anything in the text of the Bible itself that says they will marry children. I can't find that. Or marry them to multiple people in the military. I cannot find that anywhere in the text. But if you have a place in the text where you can point that out to me, I would greatly appreciate it. I should have photographed this one, because here, the child talks about a child coming to the world. It also talks about, because Jesus isn't here, there is somebody in his stead, in his place, as a comforter to the world. So now, what does this mean about inheritance and child abduction and taking children away from their parents through the DTA, the detainee, I think it's called, it's under the Department of Defense, the Detainee Act. What they do in that act is they take children away from their parents and put them in a waiting room. Okay, the waiting room is an imaginary room. It doesn't exist. Where the children are in a waiting room to be adopted by someone in the country. But they're making so many fake records, and I looked into the patents, the American patents, American held patents, and the names that they're using to identify me, for example, are all in those patents, like way back, like from 1860. And I started looking into the Mayflower too, about Dorothy being a slave, an indentured servant to one of the people on the Mayflower. But when you look at the names of the people on the Mayflower, it almost looks like a made-up story at this point. So many things have been hidden from us. So let's go down here. This life is eternal, that they might know thee, the only true God. Know thee, the only true God, in Jesus Christ, So know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent. Go up here and it says, I pray not that thou shouldest take them out of the world. So he's asking you not to kill these children. I pray not that thou shouldest take them out of the world. It could also be don't educate them. But that thou shouldest keep them from the evil. All right, well, if you don't know these laws as it's spoken, if you're continually deceived by people posing as your friend, you're not actually practicing what Jesus said. But now let's look at this. Why are some children, okay, it says, I pray to keep them from the evil. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. They are not of the world. Their domicile is in the kingdom of heaven, which is not contained in the world, the worldly jurisdictions. It's in God's jurisdiction, the jurisdiction of that is why I believe, now this is just, whether you like Trump or not, Trump is talking about we need God. We need God to help us understand the law, the banking law, and also that these children, and I believe this refers not to the Comforter, but refers to children of God, which is all of us. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. Sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is truth. As thou hast sent me into the world, even so have I also sent them unto the world. And for their sakes I sanctify myself, that they also might be sanctified through the truth. It's very odd that, we got Truth Social, Trump always talking about truth, truth, truth. Neither pray I for these alone, but for them also which shall believe on me through their word. So, there's a lot in here about people doing works that they believe are good, but they're not under the prescriptions of Jesus, as far as I can tell from the words. Neither pray I for these alone, but for them also which shall believe on me through their word, that they all may be one, as thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee, and they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that thou hast sent me. And the glory which thou gavest me I have given them, that they may be one, even as we are one. So I kept looking at this passage up here. I have given them thy word, and the world hath hated them. So this is about persecution, but I'm not sure exactly if it's referring to the Comforter in chapter 16, the child, or what it's referring to. I pray not that thou shouldest take them out of the world, but that thou shouldest keep them from the evil. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. So that to me has to do with domicile and citizenship. Citizens are, if you believe in the Bible and you're a believer, you have to pay attention to what these chapters are saying about, don't be deceived by men, but also you can't be deceived by the laws that you don't know, because in law, it would deem you a volunteer. Now, what happened to me where they claimed I was an organ donor in Florida, made a bunch of different identities, I can't find that in the Bible. I cannot find intentional deception of children in the Bible where they're basically, they create 25, let's just say the number is 25 birth certificates for a child and take them away from their parents. I can't see that anywhere in the Bible. But I do find this interesting. Okay, I'm going to go back to what I was just talking about, but I'm going to try to do a longer video. I wanted to talk about your Christian name. And you might be aware of this. I was not aware of this. Pertaining to Jesus Christ, or the religion founded by him, professing Christianity, the adjective is also used in senses more remote from its original meaning. Thus, a court Christian is an ecclesiastical court. A Christian name is that conferred upon a person at baptism into the Christian church. As a noun, it signifies one who accepts and professes to live by the doctrine and principles of the Christian religion. Christian name, the baptismal name distinct from the surname. I don't know, I guess that's a misspelling, has been said from the bench that a Christian name may consist of a single letter. Name, the designation of an individual person or of a firm or corporation. And when you think about our straw man being sold, basically a trust is created through the Roman Church, and then, I guess it's called the Sestake Trust. But it says the designation of an individual person or a firm or corporation. In law, a man cannot have more than one Christian name. In law, one cannot have more than one Christian name. So, what would your name be? Your first name is your Christian name, not your surname. So, that is how the government is getting around, I guess, Christianity by saying, well, it's their Christian name is on the document, the Christian first name, and then they give you, 150 last names to take your inheritance, your inheritance, familial inheritance, inheritance by God, and inheritance as defined in the Bible. It's your inheritance. It's not theirs. And on my documents, signed by my mother and my father, who I always believed were my mother and father, it calls them loan officers. So they're loaning out my estate through some kind of inheritance law and, claiming I'm dead on paper, because every time you're dead, I guess they half the estate and then steal your money. Okay, fraudulent conveyance, a conveyance or transfer of property, the object of which is to defraud a creditor. So we're, the American people, and if you're watching from overseas, probably, it's probably the same there, that that you're the creditor, you're the secured party creditor, but you have to establish yourself as a secured party creditor by creating a last will and testament, not through deception, but of your own volition to protect your children and your family, and creation of a trust. And if you don't do that, then you're basically a sitting duck, because then the IRS, using fraudulent names, pseudonyms, there's a bunch of documents about it online, they're allowed to use pseudonyms and not real names. They come and harass you as collection agents for your estate. There's a couple of things you can do. You can order the ALS records. I think it's $130 to get the CD. And I think they only give it to you 1 year at a time. But even last year, looking up my socials, they're all over the country. My social that was assigned to me is all over the country, attached to properties where I was never informed. So the federal government, unless you establish yourself, like it says in my USCIS records, I don't know if those are made up. I don't know if those are Disney records. I don't know what they are. Whatever they are, if you've ever gone to Disneyland, you need to make sure to say it now. I expatriate from Disneyland, from the jurisdiction of Disneyland, in whatever way possible. Because in my USCIS records, it has the name Griffin. And then somebody, I don't know why this happens, left a giant grouping of documents talking about how they're targeting children using CPS, and a Los Angeles organization, I don't want to say what the name is, where they bump into the children in public. All right, now children might just be that you haven't claimed your minor estate. It might actually be children. And then you don't show them family photos because you don't want to make them jealous, because these people are, they're kept from their true family. And then it says that you don't reach out and shake their hand, because it means something sexual if they don't know what it means. And then that is, I guess, how they can get access to your estate. So it says the only thing that they're doing by feigning empathy. This is an organization that's supposed to be, it's basically a psychoanalysis type organization. It sends people to bump into these people in public and pretend they go to the same school, or, I mean, this has happened to me numerous times. And the only thing they're interested in is the transactions, because the transactions help to process the gifting. Okay, the gifting is, they're stealing from your estate. That's all they're doing. They're stealing from your estate. But I thought it was interesting. It came with a script. I posted it on TikTok. You know, just the portion where it says that there's a doll with a defect, an inverted head, and the doll is worth $200,000. And then it came with a printout for this person that works for Disney, like a receipt for $200,000. So they're just taking from your estate, because they had some kind of sovereign land, I guess. So if you go to Disney World or Disney, it's their own jurisdiction that they've just made up. How do you get out of that? You claim the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven's jurisdiction. You expatriate from Disney, because everyone I know has gone to Disney at some point. And if you're protected before going to Disneyland, that's one thing. But if you're not, that's a different thing. But I found it interesting that somebody provided these documents to me, which they were attached to something called Purge Studios. So they're really, when you look at Purge, it's about stigmatization of a race or a people, and purging them from the earth. And that was very disturbing to me. So we're all God's children of God. And what was I going to show next? Oh, this is the chapter 16 I was going to talk about a little bit. Now, Christ further comforts his disciples. Sorrow shall be turned into gladness. Acceptable prayer. 33, peace. 33, there's a lot of different meanings to 33. I always look up the U.S. codes involved. These things I have spoken unto you, that ye should not be offended. They shall put you out of the synagogues, yea, the time cometh that whosoever killeth you will think that he doeth God's service. So the people that are torturing you or persecuting you they really do think that they're doing God's service. And these things will they do unto you, because they have not known the Father nor me. But these things I have told you, that when the time shall come, ye may remember that I have told you of them. And these things I said not unto you at the beginning, because I was with you. You're created by your Holy Father. So even if you're in the children's waiting room, you're still a child of God. But now I go my way to him that sent me, and none of you asketh me, whither goest thou? But because I have said these things unto you, sorrow hath filled your heart. Nevertheless, I tell you the truth, it is expedient for you that I go away. For if I go away, the Comforter will, if I go not away, the Comforter will not come unto you. But if I depart, I will send him unto you. God is sending, or Jesus is sending, a Comforter to the people. And when he is come, he will reprove the world of sin and of righteousness and of judgment. Of sin, because they believe not on me. Of righteousness, because I go to my Father, and ye see me no more. Of judgment, because the prince of this world is judged. The prince, the little prince. As it said on one of the fake, death, using one of my mom's names, there was this plaque, and it was under her name, like a gravestone. It was under her name, and then under that it said in parentheses, Raymond, the little prince. That I found very weird. So anyway, this is what it is. Gotta find, I just had whoops. Hang on a second. The other thing that is interesting is the use of American Indians. If you really look into what those laws mean, those are Americans. Those are people, said many of the American Indians are from England, or from, they were brought here to populate America, right? And they're considered American Indians. And the government got kind of off the mark by claiming that these people could not handle their own affairs and that they were incompetent to have their own land. And, it changed. There was something that changed about the pursuit of happiness, pursuit of liberty, happiness, joy, whatever. It includes property rights, property ownership, and there's so many people in America that don't know the way the laws are working. I'm one of them. Okay. So Mayflower, 1620. John Alden. Now look at some of these names. William and Mary Brewster, love and wrestling. John and Catherine White Carver had a indentured servant named Dorothy with no last name. Dorothy, John, right down here. Dorothy, John Carver's maidservant. Look at the bottom to the right. Mr. Eli. So look at these names. Some of the names are just bizarre. This one is weird. Love, William and Mary Brewster, and children love and wrestling. You know? And so you need to study this list, see what this list says. There's some other very strange names. They're not on this list, but they're on some of the other lists where... Here are some of the other names: wrestling, love, humility, and remember. Remember me to the one that goes there, right? Remember. Humility, love, and wrestling. These are pretty odd names. Remember Allerton was a little girl of about 5 when the Mayflower set sail. Remember. Remember. We're all now remembering that what we were taught is not true, that the history that we've been taught... I mean, what about Tartaria? What about these beautiful buildings that we've never been able to replicate? Who was here first? Who was here first, and what happened to them? And what was this orphan train? Did they remove those children from somebody else, from their real parents that maybe were the creators of that beautiful world that was so abundant? Desire Minter was a young woman who came over on the Mayflower. She was probably younger than 19. Both Desire and Humility later returned to England, which wasn't common. D. Gorey. D. Gorey Priest was an adult hatter, about 40 years old, who came alone on the Mayflower, planning to bring his family over later. Unfortunately, he died the first winter at Plymouth. About 40% of the passengers died that first hard winter. Oceanus. I mean, these are Resolved and Peregrine. Remember the island of special children? Wasn't it Miss Peregrine's Island of Special Children? Resolved White and Peregrine White were 2 young brothers on the Mayflower. Resolved was 5 at the time of the voyage. So they're using these names in everything we see. You know, they're using these names. And if you watch movies or if you watch The Blacklist, they use these names again and again and again. And remember is, you know, it's us waking up to our stolen history. We don't even know what the Earth is anymore. I mean, was the Earth... Why are they trying to tell us it's round when you see that there's a bunch of documentation where it says it's flat? It's absolutely flat. And it's just bizarre that they tried to trick you through media. Okay. This is very interesting too. Wills and inheritance in the Bible. I think everyone should read this. You can just type in wills and inheritance in the Bible. Inheritance in the old... Let me just... The Bible often uses human affairs to illustrate spiritual principles. Perhaps the best example is marriage, which demonstrates the relationship between Christ and the church. Indeed, it could be said that God instituted marriage for that purpose, but it is also good in itself. Paul puts forbidding marriage in the category of deceiving spirits and things taught by demons. But what about forced marriage in this country? What about forcing marriage to people you've never met or are using false names? I mean, that you don't even know you're married, so they can steal your estate, your inheritance. Likewise, we see that the taking steps to deal with the future of our assets after death is good and proper in itself, as well as illustrating something of an eternal significance. Write a will, study what you want to provide for your children, and then also write a trust. The revocable trust, I haven't figured out the irrevocable common law trust as well as I figured out the revocable trust, but you have to do that, or they're just going to keep taking your money while you're alive. And they're also, by doing this, preventing you from your riches in this plane, which is what Jesus said that you deserve. They're preventing you from practicing your religion by withholding money to the American people. And I don't care where they said I'm born. There's so many fake records that they made. I couldn't believe they gave me the USCIS records claiming I was born in England on a totally different date. I'm also married in England, supposedly. And I told you what I believe about that. These children are Basque, and they were here first. They were here in America first. And then they just take the children from the parents. I don't see that anywhere in the Bible. Okay, so you need to do this. This is what the Bible prescribes. The best example is marriage. Our money and possessions are entrusted to us by God to look after for Him, and we therefore should seek His will as to what should happen to them after we are promoted to glory. Likewise, we see that taking steps to deal with the future of our assets after death is good and proper, as well as illustrating something of eternal significance. Well, what they're doing through the Lord Culloden, naming a child Lord Culloden, is they're donating the child to the Culloden Trust because of the amount of his inheritance. And that, I don't think that no child should be donated or sold into to a trust. Inheritance in the Old Testament, God did not criticize Abraham for being concerned about who would inherit his estate. Rather, He reassured him on the subject. And this is why they try to keep you poor. So you're like, oh, everything can go to whoever. Because you don't have anything, because they're stealing everything because you haven't claimed your minor estate. Let's go. But Moses, with God's authority, clarified the law of inheritance to ensure that family assets could be passed on even if there were no sons. This was implemented by Joshua. However, the family heads of Clan Gilead drew Moses' attention to a potential problem arising from this change. Their inheritance could be transferred to those other tribes, contrary to God's allocation of the land. Now, God's allocating the land to the inheritors of the land, not to someone else. At the Lord's command, Moses ordered that any daughter inheriting land must marry only within her tribe. Only within her tribe. So in the records, they're calling these people battle princesses, and then they're marrying them to, a bunch of military personnel that's not really in their tribe because they don't know about it. They're not told of these forced marriages. At the Lord's command, this is depriving you of your right to practice your religion and your faith. This is not just commercial instruments and banking. This is something else. This is going against inheritance law, where the child at 18 is supposed to have access to their estate, whether it's 2/3 when they're 18 and then half when they're 25. They are not supposed to suffer financially. So this oppressive government has decided for itself that all of these children of God who have rightful inheritance are made to suffer just because they don't know the law. And so that is wrong. That is wrong. At the Lord's command, Moses ordered that any daughter inheriting must marry only within her own tribe. So they're forcing marriages. So you're not marrying within your own tribe. Are they saying your own tribe is military? So inheritance law was developed to cure an anomaly. The details are specific to Israel and not directly relevant to us for today's purposes. Yet the principle suggests that it is responsible for us to ensure that our assets, and trust me, anyone who is being oppressed has a ton of assets that they're trying to keep you from. They're trying to keep you depressed, not in joy, not in the realm of all of the promises that God and what the Bible promises, because you're being kept from money. Money is the only way to stay safe. It even says in the Bible that it is good a wise man will hide. You can't hide without money. You have to have money. So that is what they're doing. It is torture and it is intentional. And I don't believe that it says anywhere in the Bible that they're supposed to hide the fact that you have a trust so that you don't know who to write to demand your assets at 18. You're never told because they want to steal your rightful inheritance given to you by God. So inheritance in the New Testament, God has made a will leaving everything to his son Jesus, whom he appointed heir of all things. He is our model. If he has made a will, we should also encourage people to do so. So through trickery, someone in my family asked me to make a will many years ago. So you have to, if you were ever asked to do it, override it. Write another one. Redacting, revoking any former wills and codicils you've ever made. So that you have your affairs in order, and then write a trust to take care of your children and your parents and your whoever you want to take care of. In fact, back in the Old Testament, we're allowed to eavesdrop as the father makes his will, discussing it with his son. What was the outcome? If we're looking for the outcome of something mentioned earlier in the Bible, we may find it in the one book many Christians find daunting, Revelation. There we read that after a vision setting the scene, the Father's throne in heaven, the Apostle John saw a closed book, a scroll. Tantalizingly, he could see some writing on the outside, but it was rolled up, so he could not read it. What this scroll reveals emerges from the following chapters. For our present purposes, it is enough to know just the nature of its contents. The scroll contains the judgments of God that will fall on the earth, but they conclude with the full establishment of God's government and rule. God's government and rule. I think that's the time we're in. That we need to claim, so there's no presumptions about who you think you are in terms of citizenship or domicile. You need to claim God's kingdom as your permanent domicile. God, because, this U.S. corporation, CITUS in Washington, D.C., is different. It's under the post. You have to change the jurisdiction from Washington, D.C. to the Postmaster General of America. It has to do with mail enterprise. There's many things it has to do with that I can't even get my full head around. What has been written is complete. The scroll is written on both sides and sealed with 7 seals. Another way of stating the significance of this scroll is to say it contains God's plan, which is to be executed on the earth. Is God your executor of your will? The seal needs to be opened. Okay. A will is to be opened only when the testator has died. All right, so when they keep faking your death, they're just doing it to steal your own inheritance granted to you by God, your holy creator, and Jesus. And maybe even your parents. And if your parents were not smart enough to understand the law, that doesn't mean they're not smart. It just means they weren't taught. We're not taught the real important things that we need to be doing to protect ourselves and our assets from greed. It's just greed. They want us to share our wealth with them, but they don't share any of our own wealth with us. No. I mean, that is not God's plan. God's will is his final settlement of the affairs of the universe. Some of its contents have already been revealed. Who is the executor? One of the first questions. Who is the executor? In John's vision, the problem with the scroll is there apparently no one qualified to unseal it. In other words, who is the executor of the Father's will? Okay. Who can release the purposes of God to bring history to its climax? In other words, who is the executor of the Father's will? John is so distressed he weeps. Christians are enduring serious opposition. If the scroll is open, the universe will be governed in the interests of the church. But otherwise, that is weird. Looks like something's missing here. But otherwise, there will be no protection for God's children. There will be no protection for God's children in the hours of bitter trial. No judgments upon a persecuting world. No ultimate triumph for believers. No new heaven and earth. No future inheritance. Unless you get your affairs straight, write a will, get it notarized, get your thumbprint in red ink, sign in purple ink, and don't sign it. You are it's an autograph. You autograph it because you're the living person, right? A dead person signs, and I think contracts are, I don't know if contracts are blue or black, but the dead straw man is signing those. That's why when I found all of the land records and grant deeds signed in my name, it looks like it's signed in black because it's scanned into, I found a lot of records in Maryland. If you want to look in Maryland, changing my name multiple times to other names. I found records using the name Princess, and then there were like 45 other names, aka names, under, what I thought was my surname. But then they also used Battle Princess. So they're basically slating children who are peaceful in nature for war by being born. I think that's terrible. I don't think that's right. It's quite a relief then that we see Jesus revealed as the one with the credentials to be the executor of the will, the one entitled to take the scroll, open the seals, and implement its contents. He is the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David. These credentials were revealed by being gradually narrowed down through the Old Testament. From the offspring of Eve, descendant of Abraham, but of Isaac, not Ishmael, of Jacob, not Esau, I don't know how to say it, Esau, of Judah, not Reuben, or even Jacob's favorite son, Joseph. But even that was not enough to qualify him. He had to be descended from David. He had to be descendant from David to open the contents. So there's no difficulty in identifying the Jesus of the New Testament as the one always intended to release God's plan for the history of the world. So is he the executor? Normally, if you make a will leaving everything to one person, you will also appoint that person as executor. There's also something called a living will, where you are the executor during your lifetime. And it has to be your will to control your property. If you loan it out, it is your will to do so. It shouldn't be these other people's will. That is not what it says in the Bible. So what they do to children is they claim they're dead under the Social Security system. So that because you're dead and you either don't have a will or your will is ill-defined because someone coerced you to make it when you were younger, you need to clarify it and establish yourself on the private side rather than the public side. Jesus is the sole beneficiary of the Father's will. If we jump a few chapters in Revelation, we know that the request of the Father invited in Psalm 2 must have been made and that he fulfilled it. But even if Jesus is the sole beneficiary and therefore logically the executor, he has no authority to possess the will or to execute it until the testator has died. The first question a solicitor should ask when taking instructions to apply for probate is, please, may I see the death certificate, right? So when I was looking for my own records of fact, a man walked up and he said, I need a stack of death certificates. If you are a person in America and haven't claimed your minor estate, they keep marrying you on paper over and over and then claim you're dead so that it's community property so that these people become rich while you have nothing. But you should really get half of everything of all the people that married you, all of the military people that married you. You should get rightfully half. But it's really your inheritance because you might actually be a descendant of David. The first question, normally, of course, he will also convey his condolences. But in this case, it's good news, indeed, what we call the gospel, that a death has occurred. Hence, in John's vision, we see Jesus's other essential qualification to be the executor. Having been announced as a lion, he appears as a lamb. It bore the evidence of having been slain. I don't know what that means. Those wounds yet visible above, in beauty glorified, as the hymn puts it. Jesus' wounds were still apparent after his resurrection. Remember, he invited Thomas to feel them. These are his identifying marks, and he still had them when he ascended to heaven. Which, I guess, I don't know, they're trying to take the Bible a little too seriously when they're preventing the people at Gitmo from having any kind of medical care. I mean, maybe they're claiming, they're protected species. Maybe they're just descendants of David, and they're trying to fulfill a prophecy after injuring them. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Who has died. Isn't it the person who made the will that has to die? Yes, but we know that Jesus is by very nature God and said, I and the Father are one. This is somebody else's interpretation, so I'm just reading it because I thought it was interesting. Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. The fact that he is God is confirmed by the 7 horns and 7 eyes. The number 7 represents perfection or completeness. So the 7 horns represent complete power or strength. Only God is omnipotent. And we are told that the 7 eyes represent the 7 spirits of God, the Holy Spirit. I want to just get down to here. Christ is the mediator of the new covenant, that those are called may receive the promised eternal inheritance through Christ. Whereas we have said that the Father made only Jesus his heir. But Jesus is pleased to share his inheritance with us. So the federal government, when it created this system that goes through Washington, D.C., they claimed Jesus is an inheritance to all of us for themselves in greed, and did not share it with the people who actually had the inheritance. That, to me, is beyond. This is God's grace. He didn't have to do it. We are given the same status as Jesus. The rightful inheritors of the inheritance that is ours. So by the government doing this to children, yes, it's law, I understand, but they are actually taking away their religion, their faith in God. They're really damaging children and people who are believers, who are the rightful inheritors. He is happy to accept us, God's adopted children, as entitled to share the inheritance with him, God's only begotten Son. So the heavenly company in God's vision saying that not only Jesus will reign, but that we shall reign on the earth. Thus we see Jesus, I was going to talk about purple rain right there. Purple is, if you start signing in purple, if you claim your own self as your own, like you have to rule your own self and sign in purple. Because if you continue to sign in black and sign in blue, that's contract law. He's happy to accept us, God's adopted children, as entitled to share the inheritance with him. Thus we see Jesus, having completed his saving work on earth, conquering sin and death by his cross and his resurrection. So is Jesus resurrecting himself from the oppressive government by establishing himself in the private? I don't know, but it seems like we can interpret it a lot of different ways. And ascended to the Father's right hand, taking the Father's will from the same right hand, as the Father gives him power and authority to bring into effect his kingdom rule, which he will share with those he has redeemed. How do you become redeemed? You establish yourself. And even though your will is private, you still have to file a notice of will. I guess you could send your sealed will instrument with your name and social security number, if you ever had one, to Maryland or to Washington, D.C., so they know that you have your estate in order and that somebody else doesn't have the right to prevent you from it. Following his ascension to heaven, Jesus confirmed as the executor of the Father's will, and until his return, he's implementing God's remaining plan for the history of the world. So that's open to interpretation. But his death and resurrection means the inheritance is released. Not just to Jesus as the original beneficiary, but to us, his brothers, who've put our trust in him. So why is the government keeping people who are believers from their own inheritance? Because they have to establish in the record to the Attorney General of the United States that this is what they're doing. They have to establish it. It is inheritance that we can begin to enjoy now. We don't have to wait till we're dead. We do not have to wait until his return. Paul uses the idea of a trust for minor children. That's what they're doing. They're using your minor estate and loaning out your estate using alternate names, frequently used in wills today to illustrate the temporary purpose of the law until the promise of righteousness by faith in Christ has fulfilled by his death. As believers, we are not to live like minor beneficiaries of a trust. So those that are oppressing us are actually not following God's laws, and they're not following the Bible. They're just being greedy, making do with what the trustees will advance to us. They keep us in check to stop us squandering our inheritance. No, they don't. They don't want you to have any cash, so you can't fulfill what it says in the Bible, your right to hide. The wise man hides. And I thought about this in terms of trans people and the trans agenda. Maybe they're taking that very literally, even hiding their gender. You know, I did think about that. I'm not encouraging that. I'm saying I think that however you're born is how God created you, but maybe they're taking it to that level of hiding, as the Bible says to do. That is what we are doing if we go back trying to please God by keeping rules and regulations by our own efforts. Instead, we should live as those who have unrestricted access to God's riches. You can't if they're oppressing you by keeping control of your minor estate. Okay, so I wanted to show you, this is a notice of a private trust. Look at, it's got Department of Treasury. These are all trustees. Private citizenship status of Beth Star Valdez, special and private trust arrangement. So what they do is they get an assumed name certificate going where the assets are yours, and then they do an assumed name, which I saw in the John Allen White Trust, to basically give it to these people. These people are the ones with the, these are the legal trustees. So it's an affidavit of status. But when you read through this, it shows, I'm neither surety for nor the personal property of present corporate sole and future private business trust, non-taxpayer Beth Star Valdez. As a private citizen of the United States, being 50 states in union under the Constitution, said citizenship being unaltered by any state or federal contract, express or implied. Okay, it all seems normal, right? But then later in this document, it said the previous name they used to identify this person was Eric John Phelps. So they're changing the name created for and held by the government of the United States, including the estate of Beth Valdez. So, remember I said that all of these children that they're hold, the children with the great wealth, it's not just children from Basque country, but I did find something on a consular record where Roberts had, it was like the child was given the mother's name, not the father's name. And then next to Roberts, it said Saldana. And when you look up Saldana, it's all these Basque study groups. And so I don't know why they want to study the Basque, but I do know that the Basque have a lot of money. So let's see. Affidavit. Notice of interest, national citizenship status, notice of status, notice of claims. And basically what they do is they just keep changing the name of the trust, so you don't know what the name is. And then none of this is ever notarized. It's just signed by people. Something signed here, and then Jake Kelly and Jan Miller. Fully executed and recorded in Kendrick Lamar, private citizen documentation, declaration of status. Governing the special use of private business trust, Beth Star Valdez. This arrangement is to be governed by the maxims of equity uniquely cognizable exclusively in a court of chancery, equity in special term. Regards as done that which ought to have been done. By Beth Star Valdez, but later it says that it's a substitute. It says the Social Security cards, consular record under Beth Star Bautista. Seville, we always hear about Seville. So, United States Artificial Person, Public Citizen of the United States Private Business Trust, Beth Star Valdez, and the trustees named herein. And then she's naming, instead of just naming herself, she's naming the President of the United States, Rosa Gumatautau, I'm not sure how to say that, Rios, Jacob Lew, Secretary of the Treasury, John Koskinen, Commissioner of the IRS, Governor, Commander-in-Chief. So she's claiming this is private citizenship status, but then she's not claiming herself as the trustee. And then later in this document, it says that failure to rebut, refuse, and or disclaim will be construed as silent acknowledgement and consent to the above claims, pursuant to the maxims of law of contracts and the maxims of equity. You can look this up too. So what's weird is that the previous name they used was John Eric Phelps. So John Eric Phelps is a male name, and then they changed it to this name. All legal interest by nature of the trust and all trust property shall be held by the trustee in the name of private business trust. So this is what happens if you don't claim your own. You need to get your own name and claim your own name. Individuals, a property holder by nature of trust property, including the estate of Beth Valdez. Individual is a public citizen of the United States. Right? Individual is an artificial person. Exact full legal name. So they just keep changing the legal name to steal your inheritance granted to you by God in the Bible, and probably by your parents. The occupant of the office of the president is a trustee. I mean, you wouldn't give these people trustees if it was for yourself, but you would give them trustees if it was a large estate where someone hadn't claimed to have their own trust. So this is just interesting. Individual is a natural person, sole beneficiary by nature of trust property, including. Individual is a private citizen. So this individual right here is a private person. And then I wish I could find the part where it says that the previous name was John Eric Phelps. So I got a notice of acceptance of a, God, where was it that I found this? I got a notice that I was a home loan was accepted. Came to my email. When I called, I said, do you have anything under the name John Eric Phelps? And he said, hundreds of people. So it's a giant estate. They bring children here, or children are born here with an estate that their parents didn't know how to claim. And then they just keep changing the names. But I want to find, let me see, hold on. Here it is. Corporate sole Eric John Phelps, now private business trust, Beth Star Valdez. So it's a person acting for the interests of the federal government, the IRS, all of these people, using an assumed name certificate to claim that they used to be Eric John Phelps and now they're Beth Star Valdez. So they're just using names any which way they want to. And that is not what the Bible says. That is not Christian law. So I just wanted to show you these things. I don't know. There's a lot that I've been learning, and it's overwhelming what they've done to the country. I found a really good person online. I don't know if you guys have already found him. Somebody named Patrick Devine. They claim he's not around anymore. He's got some really interesting documents out there. I found some really interesting things. But I don't want to call out the websites in case they're being private. So, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. See ya.